over to Israel. David Mencer is here. He's a spokesman for the Israeli government, because what we saw over the course of the weekend was the bombardment of Tel Aviv. For the first time in about 4 months, the air raid sirens were going off. There were multiple rockets being fired out of Gaza into the heavily populated city of Tel Aviv. Of course, as you might expect, the usual apologists for Hamas didn't complain about that. But then they did complain when there was an attack based upon the retaliation for that on Rafah. Let's find out from David what's happening. David, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. What do you understand to be the reason for Hamas to suddenly start bombarding Tel Aviv again after 4 months? I mean, some have said that it's a kind of a last gasp, firing all the missiles before, the IDF manages to get Hamas out of wherever they are.
Yeah, so yesterday at about 1 o'clock or 1:30, a barrage of rockets hit the center of Israel. I myself was with my daughter at a doctor's appointment. We ran out of the treatment room. We ran underground to a shelter. We heard many loud booms that shook the ground. And as the Israel's Iron Dome defense system took out those Hamas rockets. But make no mistake, those rockets were aimed at civilian areas. If we wouldn't have had that Iron Dome missile defense system, the casualties would have been in the thousand. That's what they've been designed to do. So, look, we know that Hamas hides amongst civilians. We know that Hamas hides their long-range missiles amongst civilians. They're not a dumb force yet. They've got at least a quarter of them are still standing. And it looks like many in the international community are working very hard together to try and keep them on their feet. But I tell you, we are determined here in Israel that Hamas pays the price for what they're doing, and we're determined to get rid of them. They're no longer going to form a threat to us once this war is over. We're going to bring back our hostages, and we're going to ensure, of course, that Hamas is no longer in charge of Gaza.
There were many instances over the course of the last few days of hostages being discovered, but sadly not still any longer alive. Have you got any more clue yet as to how many of the hostages are still actually in captivity, or whether how many of them may have passed away?
So, Mike, this is the desperately sad torture which Hamas are putting these poor families through. Not only are they torturing the hostages who are still being held hostage, but they're torturing their families as well. The thing is, Mike, they've never not once in this 7 or 8 months have they had a visit from the Red Cross, not even one time. So, we've just got no idea about how many are living. We're assuming that a good number of them are living. The figure I've heard from our experts here is dozens and dozens. So we're working every moment of the day to bring those people home, whether through negotiations or through military force. We know that's what works with Hamas, unfortunately. It's a combination of the two. That's what's worked in the past. That's what brought half of them home. And that's what we're doing in Rafah right now. We're closing in on the last 4 battalions of Hamas to bring our people home.
And as far as you understand it, would you expect that those rockets that came over yesterday from Gaza, would they be stuff that they had anyway before all of this started? Or do you think they're still capable of bringing new weaponry in underneath that sort of tunnel complex that they've got?
So, Mike, that's a good question. It's a question which all of us in Israel here are asking right now. Look, Hamas is not a spent force. It's an illusion to think that they are. They've spent the best part of 20 years preparing for this war. They've prepared these tunnels. They're twice the size of the London Tube. And the reason why it was so important for Israel to take the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing with Egypt was because we know that the 50 tunnels or so underneath that crossing was what was keeping Hamas alive. This is a war we didn't want, we didn't start. The tragedy is that innocent people die in war, but right now, right-thinking people must turn to Hamas. Any deaths that there are now, civilian or otherwise, the deaths are on Hamas. If there's one thing that these images, if they upset people in the West of what's going on right now, but images of 7th of October don't upset them, then, people need to ask themselves, why that is. We're doing what any country would do to secure our borders and eradicate this terrorist menace.
Yes, I mean it's a very strange situation, the way the West and the way that some countries have reacted to what Israel is doing. But certainly, you won't be surprised to hear that there are plenty of voices in the UK today, including many Labour MPs, saying that the images from Rafah for the retaliatory strikes are horrific. Israel shouldn't be doing it. I mean, is there any likelihood that the government in Israel would be ever influenced by what people say about what they're doing?
So let me tell you about a couple of the people which we took out overnight. The first one was the Hamas chief of staff in Judea and Samaria, and the other one was a terrorist called Yassin Rabia, who was the commander of Hamas's leadership in Judea and Samaria. The other one, was called Khalad Magar. So these were two top terrorists. The question which all people should be asking themselves is, what on earth were these people doing hiding amongst civilian areas? What on earth were they doing, as they have done for the last 8 months? Let's be clear, they've hidden amongst civilians. So everyone should be asking themselves this question. If you want terrorists to always have a get out of jail free card in their armory just by hiding amongst civilians, then you should continue what you're doing in opposing Israel's action. We're on the front line of civilization here. We're going to defeat this terrorist army. We're making a lot of progress, but we're not done yet. There still are these 4 battalions, but we are going to clear them out.
And what about the leaders of Hamas who sit very nicely high on the hog in these rather well-appointed houses, mansions, some might say, in Qatar, where they don't even really have to worry about whatever Gaza is undergoing. They don't have to worry about any food shortages, any water shortages. They don't have to worry about any attacks from Israel. They sit in Qatar. I mean, what are they doing?
Well, of course, that's something which is very rarely spoken about in this entire conflict. The leaders of Hamas sitting in those luxury apartments in Qatar. They're getting regular hugs and kisses from the president of Turkey as well. Let's not forget that. And of course, they received a massive boost from Ireland, from Norway, and from Spain last week, who said to them, hey, no point giving back the hostages. We'll go after the Prime Minister of Israel and the Defense Minister. You just sit tight, you hold on to them. So we know these are evil terrorists, but that's just strengthens our resolve to get rid of them. We're on the front line of this barbarism. We're going after them. We're not only doing it for us, because the Iranian regime which funds and directs Hamas, even though they are sitting pretty in Doha, they're enemies of the UK as well. So everyone who's criticizing Israel should understand that we are fighting the genocidal fascist regime in Iran, and if we don't beat them here, then they will come onto the streets of London. I was on the streets of London for 7/7. I saw that red double-decker bus with its roof peeled off like a tin of tuna. Those were tactics learnt here on the streets of Jerusalem, which means we must defeat this terrorist menace.
David Mencer, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.